now. Can you see the screen?
Yep, that's fine.
Okie dokie. So we'll start with this video.
Oh, disappeared.
Okay, so there's the video. So first off, I'm going to start off by introducing myself. Okay, so my name is Riley and I am 13 and I'm currently in the works of creating a documentary, a Titanic documentary with my friend Benedict, who couldn't make it today as he lives in the Philippines and it's currently 1 a.m. for him. We are both Titanic enthusiasts and we have a book that's being created, which we're hoping it's going to be published on the 1st of September 2021 by the help of George Behe, who is a Titanic historian. Okay, so there's me done with that. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Simon Medhurst. My great-grandfather was Robert Hichens, who was the quartermaster and helmsman on the Titanic. He was steering the ship on that night. So yeah, that's me. It's just nice to be here with Riley, and hopefully we can have a little discussion about things. That'd be really good.
Okay. So first off, you're going to start by a video that Benedict made asking some questions. Just gotta go through all the chats now. In fact, let's just do this. That's upsetting. Wait. Can I get it? Oh, plugins required.
Right, I'm sure you've got video editing.
Oh, I just had it. I've lost the thing now.
There we go. Wow, that's a big one. You've got all evening.
Oh, that's still playing. There we go. Okay, so he asked, could you tell us about your family life before and after the sinking of the RMS Titanic?
Okay, I mean, for myself, I mean, I grew up in London, and I think probably around my early 20s, I started collecting memorabilia, probably Titanic memorabilia and other memorabilia, things to do with social history. So I didn't know much about Titanic, but I thought I would collect, bits and pieces and books and anything I can get my hands on really that was Titanic connected. So that was in my early 20s. It wasn't until I was 45 that I actually found my birth father. So up to that point, I didn't know who my birth father was. I grew up in a very happy home, but didn't know who my birth father was. So it wasn't until, I say, 2012, interestingly, which is like 100 years after Titanic. In 2012, I found who my birth father was, which was amazing anyway. And then to find out that he was actually the grandson of Robert Hichens, who was on Titanic, which then made me the great grandson of Robert Hichens. So for me, I didn't grow up with Titanic. I actually found out when I was 45. So in 2012. So yeah, it's been quite a journey for me, because obviously finding out that I was actually related to someone on Titanic, even though I've been collecting Titanic memorabilia for years. So it was quite a shock for me. To learn about Robert, I didn't know who Robert was before. Obviously, everybody knows of Captain Smith and maybe Murdoch or Lightoller, and others, maybe Fred Fleet, the lookout, and others on board, but I never really knew who Robert Hichens was. So it's been an opportunity to learn who Robert Hichens is, who Robert Hichens was, and also then maybe to promote Robert Hichens, very often put in a bit of a bad light. So I felt it's been a bit of my duty to actually tell the story a little bit about Robert and actually maybe show the right side of Robert. So yeah, that's my story of myself. Robert himself was born in 1882 in Newlyn in Cornwall. So he grew up there and then joined the Royal Navy Reserves. He worked with his father doing fishing, and then obviously then made his way up through the ships. HMS Revenge in 1902, a troop ship, the HM Dongola in 1911, and then of course in 1912 he then became one of the 6 quartermasters on Titanic. I don't know if you want me to carry on with that story or whether you want to ask something else.
You can carry on with the story if you want.
Yeah, I mean, with Robert, he was one of the 6 quartermasters that was on Titanic, and his duty, as with all, was to be in the wheelhouse. His duty that night was from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock, where he would be with the other person who was at the wheel, and then at 10 o'clock he would take over from the wheel, and then he would do his, if you like, stint for 2 hours. So he was due to go off duty at 12 o'clock at night. And then as we all know, they struck the iceberg at 11:40. So he was 20 minutes away from finishing his actual duties. So yeah, that was what happened there, 11:40, and the 3 bells were rung, and he was told to go hard a starboard, which would turn the ship to port, which was to the left, and then obviously to avoid the iceberg, and then to go hard a port to then steer around it, which I imagine would be clearly so that it would steer around the iceberg and wouldn't damage the propellers as well, which it does seem that though it was gashed in the side of the ship, it didn't seem to have got as far as the propeller at the back. So at that point, Robert then was to stay on duty for a little bit longer, and then he was relieved and told to go to a lifeboat, which he did some other things before that, but then eventually he was told to go to lifeboat 6. What you've got to remember is that all the quartermasters had a boat assigned to them. So every quartermaster survived because they were given duty of a lifeboat. And obviously Roberts was on the port side in lifeboat 6. And the other thing to remember is that he was in charge of lifeboat 6. He wasn't a passenger on lifeboat 6. He was actually given complete control of lifeboat 6. If you wanted to say, he could be, as it were, the captain of lifeboat 6, as each of the quartermasters would have been. And it was his duty then to take all of those to safety. So he set out at 1 o'clock in the morning and set out. Now it's interesting that Lightoller, the captain as well, they all saw a light in the distance, which they thought was a ship that wasn't far away. So they actually wanted everybody in their lifeboats to head towards that light. And then when they got to the light, to then return and pick up more passengers that would take them to safety. So, but it seems that light seemed to have disappeared into the distance, and no one ever really caught up with it. So that's really where we are there. And of course, it was 8 o'clock in the morning that he was picked up by Carpathia, the rescue ship. So that's a very basic and sort of an outline to the story. If that helps.
Yeah, it did help. That's really interesting about your great-great-grandfather.
I've got some, I don't know if it helps, if I've got pictures here. So that's the best way of doing it. That's a picture of Robert Hichens that I have. That was taken in 1928. So when he continued his journeys later after Titanic, he was a quartermaster for many, many years after that, and other duties as well. You have here, that's a picture of myself as a baby, and the lady with the dark hair is Robert Hichens' daughter.
Oh wow!
Ivy. That's Ivy Hitchens, who was Robert's daughter, and that's me being held by Ivy Hitchens, and that's my mum over on the left. So that's me as a baby being held by Robert Hitchens' daughter. So that's quite a precious picture, really. Gives me quite a connection with Robert. Something else that may help, it just help for those who maybe are watching another time. That is Robert in his lifeboat 6. What you'll see is what he said all along was that he was standing the whole evening, making sure that it was going where it should be going, and also he wasn't wearing a hat, and he had a half wet, half dry blanket that kept him sort of semi-warm. What you'll also notice is that right at the front is Fred Fleet, who was one of the lookouts that night too. So it was quite an interesting journey, I've no doubt. But obviously there were some issues on board the lifeboat as well. But Robert was in control of the lifeboat, and he wanted everybody kept in safety.
Well, he must have been freezing on that lifeboat.
I think they were all freezing, and they were probably frightened as well. You know, no one really knew what was going on. I mean, a lot of people didn't want to get on lifeboats because they felt that if why would you want to get on a cold lifeboat when you could be in a nice warm ship? They didn't really have any idea that the ship would actually sink. They thought that, you know, they'd end up going out on a little boat out on the sea and then be brought back in the freezing cold. So they thought, no, we'll just stay aboard. So a lot of people didn't actually get on board at all on the lifeboats, which was quite sad. So though many of them went off with not many on, there was a reason for that some of the time. So what I want to know is, am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah.
What's brought you and Benedict into Titanic? What's actually your connection? What sort of, you know, interest is it? What started your interests?
Okay, so what started my interest was the James Cameron's movie of in 1997 of the Titanic, and I just found the story very interesting and I wanted to know more.
Have you watched A Night to Remember, the black and white A Night to Remember?
Not yet, but I have attempted to watch it.
Oh, you need to watch that one. that one's I feel far more accurate. But the other thing is you probably need to read A Night to Remember. That may be something that you can delve into now and again, and that helps quite a lot with the story, because that's obviously the film came from this. So yeah, it's an interesting film, that one. So do you have a collection of anything? Do you have anything that you know, books or anything like that you have?
Yeah, I have recently started a collection, but I've left them at home because at the moment I'm in England and I live in Wales.
Okay.
So I left them at home. I've got a book which is facts about Titanic.
Yep.
I've got another book which has the story of the Titanic and some facts into it, like her construction, the maiden voyage, the departure, stuff, the iceberg sinking, the Carpathia.
Yes.
As well as I have a poster which came with the book, which had many, many more facts on it.
Yes.
I've also got a Titanic mug, which I got from a Titanic museum.
Okay.
A key ring and a magnet. And currently trying to get a Titanic model.
Yeah, Titanic models are not easy. I've just finished basically the one, quite a big one, which was a 4-foot one. But that took me about 5 years to make it in total in the end. But really, ideally, that's quite a big project. You're going to take on a big model job, but you can get smaller ones that are far easier to do. So I would recommend going for a smaller Revel one or something like that to start off with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next question I have is, how did you become interested in the Titanic disaster, and when did your interest first awaken?
I would say my early 20s is when I found the story of Titanic interesting. I went to the library, and I think that's where I probably picked up my first book. It was probably I'll be honest, it was probably a library sale, you know, where they sometimes sell off some of their old books.
Yeah.
And I think it was at that point I saw probably a couple of Titanic books that were together. I thought, you know what, I'm interested. I'll have a little look at that. So I think I bought them, and then after that, there was sort of a growing interest after that. But at that point, I had literally no idea that I was actually connected to Titanic at all as a relative. So yeah, it was a strange thing to actually find afterwards that you're actually related. So it's been quite an adventure, really. But yeah, I think books really, that, you know, there's so many books out there now that can give us a real interest in the Titanic. So I hear that you're having your one done. Are you in this year?
We're trying to get it published this year, but we may postpone the schedule, I think I said that right, to April 2022.
Yes.
As it's taken far longer than we thought, as the book still needs editing and stuff like that. Books
take a long while to do. I'm actually done one myself, actually, which is due to come, but this is a bit of a news flash because nobody else knows this yet. But it's due to be published in April next year. So there will be, I have done one myself, so hopefully that will be something that people will be interested in too. And that's not really connected to a story as such, but I think people will probably understand when they actually see what it's all about. But yeah, that's due to come out in April. Having George Behe involved on your side is a big bonus, because George is a great fella, so, and a great encourager. So I found out myself really in speaking to him. So, so he's helping along with that, is he?
Yeah, he is currently helping us at the moment.
Yeah,
Like he's gonna proofread it and then probably make some edits to it and then publish it.
yeah, that's very kind. It's very good of him to get involved in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I mean for myself, it's collecting things. I mean, this is some of Robert's letters that he handwritten letters by Robert himself. So you can see that. I mean, if we had handwriting like that,
Oh wow.
quite a handwriting, isn't it? If I sort of
Yeah.
show that to you.
Very fancy.
Yeah. So he wasn't a Darth Sailor. His handwriting was a lot better than mine. So yeah. So having some of his handwritten letters is quite fascinating, really, and some signatures and stuff like that. But yeah, I think over time you collect bits and pieces, don't you? You know, probably as you get older, hopefully you'll become more and more interested and be able to collect more and more interesting stuff as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know how Benedict got involved in all things Titanic?
I'm not sure with Benedict, as he hasn't really discussed it with me, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I met him by the Titanic Book Club.
Okay.
I also met George there as well.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's some. I think it's a good way. I think books are not always easy to read. You know, especially people who maybe have dyslexia or have difficulties reading. But I'm thankful for the great variety of books that there are, different sort of, you know, different types that you can read and look into. So what's your next aim within the Titanic circle, within the book club or with yourself? So it's to produce some kind of a documentary, is it?
Yeah. We're trying to produce a documentary based on the book, as well as including some documentaries, some videos and stuff like that.
Yes. That's a good project. That's a big project to take on.
Mm-hmm. We reckon it's going to take us a couple of months or even years.
Yes, it may well do. I think that the editing process, you know, maybe taking parts out, putting bits in the right place. But I think it's a good project to do, and I think I'll give you full, you know, well done for it. Well done for having the go.
Thank you. Another question is, does your study of the Titanic and or her passengers overlap with any of your other historical interests? If so, what are those other areas of interests?
Well, you got me there completely. Yeah, I mean, I've been interested in social history, so there are some other things like, I don't know if you wanted to say the 1966 World Cup from the Dam Busters to all sorts of bits and pieces like that. So in some senses, they don't really overlap, I would say. I think the Titanic story has been very much on its own, but I do have a real interest in the people of the Titanic. So where there might be some people that would be sort of very interested in maybe the building of Titanic, the structure of Titanic, there may be those that are interested maybe in the fashions of Titanic or even the food of Titanic. Mine's more on the stories of Titanic. So there is some amazing websites that I would recommend for anybody who wants to study Titanic. I would say Encyclopedia Titanica is an excellent place to go. That will give you a great grounding on an awful lot to do with the people and all things Titanic, really. And if you're interested in the inquiry, which is, again, I would say definitely would be a great place to go, which is the titanicinquiry.org. I don't know if you've ever been on that site, but that is all the inquiry from after Titanic. So it has all of the witnesses and Robert took part in that as well. So there's a lot of what he said, which I find absolutely fascinating as well. So somebody definitely worth going and have a look.
I also have I have a few more questions to actually. So another one is, in your opinion, what do you think about the switch theory?
Oh, right, okay. Well, that one I don't really give any credence to at all. I think there's plenty enough. I think if you look on my Instagram post, you'll see there's where they can actually see the wording Titanic in the side of the ship down at the bottom of the ocean. You can actually see that on the side of the ship, and also the stamp number 401 as well, which is on some of the parts that there. So I don't think I really give any credence to it at all, really. From my point of view, anyway. Definitely, I do believe it's Titanic down there, and it was definitely Olympic that was used later on, then used in the war, and then was scrapped in 1935. So I think in my mind, there's no real, well, there's none. There's no sort of credence to the switch theory at all.
Personally, I don't believe in the switch theory.
No, it doesn't. There's not really any sense to it. I know whether there's people talk about insurance and all sorts of things. There's not really anything there. I believe that is sufficient to actually even go down that route. Really, It's one of those stories that people enjoy just to cause a problem more than anything else, I think.
How did you find out that Robert Hichens was a relative of yours?
Yeah, well, that was it. Basically, I didn't know who my birth father was, but then I received a phone call one day and say, well, I think we know who your birth father is. It is a long story. I won't go into that one, but basically, yeah, he I found out who he was, and yeah, it was just a roller coaster after that. Once I found out who he was, like we all do, we have a little look on Facebook or somewhere to see who the person is, and then obviously at that point I made contact, and then we met up a little later. So that was an amazing time for me to actually find my birth father anyway, and then to find out not only that, but obviously he was the grandson of Robert Hichens, and then me being the great grandson of Robert Hichens, which was a complete shock. But it actually then meant that everything had a meaning. So all the things that I'd been collecting then became something that I really understood about, and it meant something to me. So simple things like smallest piece of Retwood from Titanic, which was actually part of the. It was a shelf that was turned into a shelf from the wood that was from the sort of salvaged wood, debris from the debris that was floating, and it was part of the or part of it could be from the wheelhouse door. So that's quite an interesting, because that's where Robert would have been. So that's quite an interesting piece. There's also things like these, which you can get, which that you have here. We've got here. You've got this one is a piece of bollard from Titanic, and that's a piece of the big piece, which is from Titanic. So they're just things that can be an interest as well. So those sort of things become a bit more real when you realise that your great grandfather was on the ship itself.
Wow. Do you have?
Something else that? Oh, sorry.
It's fine. You can carry on.
Yeah. So, well, the other things you can have is things like this one. This was a gift to me from it's quite an interesting thing, really, because Dick Barton was somebody who'd gone down to Titanic many, many times. And what they used to do is they used to carry a bag under the submersible, like a mesh bag, which would have these styrofoam cups in. So just a normal styrofoam cup. And when they went down, the pressure of the water would shrink them to like the thimble size, which is that one there. So this was taken in 2000 down to Titanic wreck. So this one here is one that's been right down to Titanic under the submersible. So things like that are quite interesting, aren't they?
Yeah.
To sort of look out and have. Now the only thing I do have that was actually Robert Hichens was this tray, which I've got here. I've got to bring it to show you. So that's Robert Hichens' tray. That's actually the tray that he owned and he used on his journeys. Wasn't on Titanic, but after Titanic, I think he must have had this, and he used it on the ships where he'd have his lunch on, things like that on board. So that's the only thing that's in the family, the only known thing that actually belonged to Robert Hichens. So that's quite a thing to have, really, which is in my care, really, more than anything else, to be passed down the family.
Do you have any new Titanic-related projects in the works? If so, could you give us a sneak peek about the type of subject matter they involve?
I don't know if you've got any other questions.
Yeah. Do you have any new Titanic-related projects in the
sound?
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I've got you now. I've got you back.
Okay. Do you have any new Titanic-related projects in the works? If so, could you give us a sneak peek about the type of subject matter they involve?
Okay, so yeah, the book. My book is with the publisher at the moment, and it's due to be published in 2001 in April. Now I'm going to give you a sneak peek, which nobody in the world has seen before. You are the first person to see it, and it's a little sneak peek. So you probably can't see it very well, but
We can see it perfectly fine.
Yeah, so that is the book that's coming out next year. So you are the first person to see that. So I haven't put that anywhere yet. That's the front cover of the book. So that will be coming out in April next year. So as it gets a bit nearer, I'll probably release a bit more information so that that can be seen a little bit more in detail. But at the moment, you've had your first sneak peek of the project that I'm involved in. So that's due to be published next year.
Okay, I will definitely buy a copy. Wait, I've already asked that one. What are some of the most important or most surprising historical discoveries you've made whilst researching the Titanic disaster?
I think all of it to me, because obviously with me, I didn't really know anything about Titanic as such until I would say once I found my birth father in 2012, then it all kicked off. So from that point, everything's been new, everything's been fresh. So finding information about Robert himself has been interesting. So I've done a lot of work on his history. So trying to find out what ships he went on after Titanic, and then getting involved. This was, I think, I'll show this. I don't know if you can see it. I'll try and put it on the screen without the thing. But we were able to actually get a headstone for Robert done.
We can see it.
You can see that. Yeah. So it was he didn't have a gravestone. Sally Nielsen, who's a cousin, found where he was buried, but it would have been basically a poor man's grave. So it took a long time really then to decide, right, we'll get a gravestone put there. So that was one of the highlights, was to actually get a gravestone for Robert Hichens in Aberdeen, in Scotland. So yeah, that was a proper highlight, one of those things that was able to be done. He died in 1940, so I never met him, even though I might look like I was around in 1940. But yeah, he died in 1940 on the 13th of September. So he died of a heart attack when he was offshore in Aberdeen. They thought he might have been either buried at sea or whatever, but they actually found his grave in Aberdeen, which was a good thing, because then we were able to get a gravestone there for him. So that was quite a precious thing, really.
Okay, that's all the questions I have. If you want to ask any questions for me, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, I think where do you go from here? What's your next project? What's your main aim now?
Next project, or what we have planned next. We don't really have anything planned next yet, but we will probably think of something.
So you're part of the Titanic Book Club, are you? Is that where you are on Facebook? Is that?
Yep.
Or is that...
Yeah. So what? So what we
I do run a Facebook group called Titanic Memorabilia, as well as the Instagram Titanic Memorabilia. So those two things, if anybody's interested, they're there for people if they're ever interested in all things Titanic and want to learn a little bit more. Hopefully a friendly and a nice place to be as well. Family friendly, that's what I've aimed it to be.
Okay, so what we do in the Titanic Book Club is basically discuss about Titanic and stuff like that, books about her. We also have a website, which is titanicbookclub.com. We also sort out like book of the month. So basically we'll have a book every month, which would be a Titanic book. We also do interviews like this with authors, Titanic relatives, other Titanic enthusiasts, and other people who are interested to the relates of Titanic.
Excellent. I think it's one thing that I think probably more than anything else is that to make sure that the young have a real interest and not discouraged. I like to think I do some. I mean, since COVID, we've pretty well been stopped doing most things, but what I've always done is children's talk. So I would go to a school and talk to a group of children and take some bits and pieces with me for them to hold or look at or just and then we'll tell the story of Titanic to them. So that's something that's been quite precious. And I think the reason I'm happy to do this evening really is because I want you to be encouraged. I want you to go on from strength to strength and enjoy what you're doing. The story of Titanic is a fascinating one. There's so many aspects of it, whether it's the rich, the poor, whether it's the clothing, the food, the way it's built, how it sank, and then it moves on then to other things, with the Olympic and other ships as well. So my word to you is to be encouraged and continue with what you're doing, because you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Do you have anything you would like to share with us or stuff like that?
I think the thing you can do, and I'll just run this one as a sort of an extra. See, this here is a replica of the biscuits that were on board the lifeboats. So you can see by the size of it, that is sort of the size it is. But that was made by my wife, so it can be done. That was made out of salt dough, and she made it. So there are things that you can do that doesn't have to be expensive, or you can find things that maybe you can make a replica of some sort, and that for me is perfect for taking to speak to people and talk to them about the Titanic. So don't feel that it's all about money and it's all about expense. Sometimes you can do things that are a little bit cheaper, but you can enjoy yourself at the same time. So yeah, there's sort of things that you can do. Not sure I've got really much else on here. I've got some bits and pieces to show you. So hopefully you've seen most of the things that I can physically bring to you and show you. But I hope it's been a help to you, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you for having this interview with us. Well, with me.
No problem at all.
And that's all I have for tonight.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. It's been great to do that with you, Riley, and I hope that you can continue with the way you're going and enjoy what you do. And every success with your book too.
Thank you.